Hello, everybody. So this is going to be week 7. So for week 7, there's a few things we need to know about. And so for the most part, this is a normal week. So we have a normal SciBooks and lab assignment like usual. However, we have a practice exam this week, and we have the real exam available next week. All right. So I'm going to go over this real quick here, the information, and then we'll maybe take a look at a couple of these things. So exam information. So the exam one practice is available now. So that is just a 20 question um, multiple choice Canvas quiz. And you need to take that 4 points. You can take it as many times as you want, though, and your highest score will count. Um, that's in the assignments category, not the exam category of the grade book. And then the real exam will open Friday, and it'll stay open until next Wednesday. You only get 2 tries on the real exam, and the time limit is 180 minutes. Now, you do not need 180 minutes for this. You'll see people, well, you won't see, but I'll see people are generally going to take something like 20 minutes on the actual exam, especially if you took the practice exam first, so you're not looking up every answer. But what do I want to say about that? But I still have a time limit set. And so that's just mostly to keep you from taking the exam, starting it on one day, and then finishing it up on another day or something like that. But you do get 2 tries, and your highest score will count. And it is just something like a 30 question multiple choice Canvas quiz. It's not going to um, kill you, probably. In addition to the practice exam and the real exam, there's also a discussion board post that you need to make. And so that's also worth points, and it's also due Monday, so you need to do it. All right. Now, the exam does cover material from this week. So you should watch the lectures from this week's, particularly this lecture. Although if you're hearing this, then you are watching this lecture, so that's good. Um, what about it? So down here in lecture 1, you'll see we're talking about if statements, which we started last week, and logical operators. And logical operators are pretty much the thing that we need for the exam. So that's kind of the last topic on the exam. And then the other thing, last thing, is that the assignments were previously open by mistake for one of my sections. So only 1 out of 3, but it's this one, 12107. That's the one where the exam was open by mistake. And so because it was open by mistake, you may have already taken it and you already have points. So if you're happy with your score, you can keep it. Do make sure you do all 3 of these things though. And if you took it early and you want to take it again, let me know and I'll be able to add another attempt or two to your well, to you, right? So that you can take it again because maybe you took it early, but you didn't get all the points, right? So that's the idea there. Let me know if you need me to do that, and I will be able to do that. Also, regarding the time limit, some of you get extra time on exams from DSPS. And if you need extra time, you can let me know and I can manually give you extra time on the exam. However, again, 180 minutes is way more time than anybody ever takes on the exam. So you may find that you don't need the extra time on the exam. But if you do, let me know and I can open that up. Not open it up, I can add it manually to you. All right. So that's the exam. Now, just to show you that it's not going to kill you, if I click on exam one practice, I actually have it open here. It takes you here. It says go take the exam one. Oh, that's the discussion. Um, right. So this is the discussion assignment, but the discussion assignment will tell you to take exam practice once, come here and explain the answer to one of the practice questions. You should write like at least 3 questions or sentences for your explanation. And you should pick a question that's not the easiest because that's more useful to the other students, right? If you come back here and you want to read these discussions, you want to get good information. And if everybody answers the easiest possible question, then that's no good. Now, you won't be able to see replies until after you make a reply. So you have to answer a question before you can read other people's replies. Now, having said that, let's look at the exam one practice. Here we go. So you can see that this is a 20-point quiz, graded. This one has no time limit and it's not going to shuffle the answers, but the real exam probably will. You get unlimited attempts, higher score counts. This is on the practice. On the real exam, you only get 2 attempts. Um, all right. Now I'll just jump in just to look at it. We're not going to stay here very long, but we have questions like this, right? Like a Java application must have a main method. Yep, that's what runs when you start up a Java application is the main method. Some of these are trick questions. For example, Java source code can be executed on a Java virtual machine. That sounds true, but it's actually false. Um, for example, maybe I'll take this, come over here. Well, I'll go to the discussion and I'll make a reply. So we had this question. Question. Java source code can be executed on a Java virtual machine, and I guess this is true or false. And then I can put my answer. I could say this is a trick. Why is it a trick? Source code is the text that we write when we're writing a program. I'll just say when we do coding. Um, you can't execute that, right? So the key word here is that it says source code can be executed. So you can't execute text, okay? You must compile your program, and the compiled program uh, is executed on the, I'll say JVM rather than type Java virtual machine. So it's a trick question because source code can't be executed. You have to compile it first. So it's a trick. So what's the answer? The answer is actually false, right? Um, and there we go. That's my reply. And so you have to do that for one of the other questions, not this one, but one of the others, hopefully. And so some of the other stuff here, you see there's kind of a lot of questions about if statements. Um, that's why you need to look at this week's material to make it make sense for some of these. This one, for example, though, this one's not that bad. So given strings, hello and goodbye, what would str3 be if you do str3 equals str1 plus str2? And so we know all the time when we do like print line, for example, that when you add strings, it just puts them together, right? That's how we make bigger strings. So it just smushes them together one after the other. And looking at these, this is hello. There's no spaces after or before the word. This is goodbye. I see actually there is a space after the E. Um, so what will it look like? I guess it'll look like this, right? Hello, goodbye. Um, because we did str1, str2, so that's hello first, goodbye second. But there's no space, so that would not be the right answer. It's also not goodbye, hello, because that would be the wrong order, so it's this one, right? And so on. Some of these are, which statement is incrementing the integer x? So what does increment mean? It means add one. So this will add one to x, right? This is not incrementing x. This is adding one to x and storing it in y, which is different. Um, what's evaluated first? Well, we have addition, multiplication, and addition. We know multiplication happens before addition. So that, right? So some of these questions go back a ways, and some of them are this week's material. Actually, it seems like the ones at the beginning of the practice exam are mostly from this week's material. But regardless, you could take this infinite number of times. I'm not saying you should do this, but if you get really stuck on one and you can't come to office hours or something, um, something like ChatGPT, like if I say, "What is Y?" Uh, displayed in the following code, right? If I ask that, it says int y equals x plus 1. That's actually kind of a weird, like that's a weird statement. So what happens? Um, so x is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, which will be stored in x, which will be stored in y. So I think y will be 2. Um, it explains it here, and it tells you that the final values are x equals 2 and y equals 2, and then it says y is 2. It also thinks the code is C# for some reason, although C# and Java look essentially identical. Um, check mark. Um, so you can get a little bit of help if you need it on some of those questions. Now, on the actual exam, there will be a notice saying you are not allowed to use AI on it. You should be able to answer these yourselves, but for the practice test, of course, it's okay to do this sort of thing. All right. So that's enough practice test. We need to move on and look at our actual material for today. So our material for today is on if statements and logical operators being something that you'll see on that practice test and on the real test. So this is a short set of lecture slides here, but it will get us where we need to go. So logical operators. These are not the only logical operators, but they are important. So there's this one, which you type and in Java, and it means and. And there's or, which you type with two vertical lines. So those are not L's, they're vertical lines. Where do you get a vertical line? Maybe I should have done this, but I didn't. So we're going to Google keyboard, not keyboard country, although I'm now tempted to click on more keyboards and look at some of these keyboards here. A lot of these are kind of retro. Those are nice. Keyboard, delete, go. Images, uh, big, big. All right, here we go. Keyboard. So where's the vertical line? It's right here. So you have your enter key, and then right above it, we have the backslash key and also a vertical line. So you'll have to press shift and this key, and we will get a vertical line that way. Sometimes in some fonts, it doesn't look like a vertical line. It actually looks like kind of a dashed line, like there's a hole in the middle, but still it's the same symbol. So that's your vertical line there. Now back to here. So that's how you type that. And what the logical operators are for is to combine Boolean expressions. Okay. And they're commonly used in if statements, which we learned last time, because we learned, let me go to Eclipse here. There's a lot of stuff here. We learned last time how to write an if statement, and we learned that an if statement has if, and then in parentheses, we put a statement that's either true or false, a condition in there. And so what the and or allow us to do is to write a longer condition, a more complicated condition using and or using or. And so I'm going to delete what's in here though. And we'll take a look. So how does this look, or how does it work? So like, let's say imagine We want an if statement that detects, let's say, X values from, let's just say, 10 up to 20. And we further clarify that we want to include the 10 and the 20, right? Now, what we know from before is that, if you wanted to be bigger than 10, that would be X greater than 10, right? And if we wanted to include the 10, it would be X greater than or equal to 10, like that. But if I do X greater than or equal to 10, that would include everything, right? Everything greater than 10. So like if I said if X greater equal 10, and then I said system dot out dot print line, and I say uh where between 10 and 20, like that, and let's just actually put a variable value in there. If I put, 15 in there, of course, I think this should happen, right? If X is 15 and we check if X is greater than or equal to 10, it'll happen and it'll say, oops, compile. Oops, there, missing semicolon, save it, run it again. We're between 10 and 20, but we're not actually between 10 and 20, because if I put like 895 there, this still says we're between 10 and 20, right? Because this is saying greater than or equal to 10. We didn't do anything about up to 20. And so uh, if you wanted to be between 10 and 20, that would be, you have to be greater than or equal to 10, and you need to be less than or equal to 20, right? So that would be X less than or equal to 20. So you need both of these conditions to be satisfied. You need to be bigger than or equal to 10 and less than or equal to 20. That means you're between. And so that's what this and operator is going to do. So if I come here, I can just put and. So and is two ands, X less than 20, less than or equal to 20, like that. And now when I run this, we get nothing, because 895 is not between 10 and 20. But if I picked, 17, we're between 10 and 20. If I do 7, we get nothing again. If I do 13, we're between 10 and 20, right? So the point is that when you need values between two numbers, then you have conditions like this. You need to be bigger than one of the numbers, but you need to be smaller than one of the other numbers. And the correct way to connect those together is with this and operator. We need both of these conditions to be true. Now, going back over here, they're going to explain what these mean. So here it says and it's true only if both expressions are true. We just saw that, right? We just saw that. You need, like, we run the code in the if statement here because 13 makes the first statement true, X greater than or equal to 10, and it makes the second statement true, X less than or equal to 20. So it makes both of these true. And we ended up inside that if statement. Okay. Now, just to try to illustrate this, it says true only if both expressions are true. In this example, there's no if statement, but if we said Boolean, remember Booleans are true false values. Boolean is sunny equals true. Boolean is weekend equals false. So one of them is true and one of them is false, right? So when you run this system.out print line and we do is sunny and is weekend, you have a true and you have a false. So one of them is true and one of them is false, and the result is going to be false. In order to make this true, we would need both conditions to be true. Now, going back up here, it says an or is going to be true if at least one expression is true. So we only need one of them to be true for an or to be true. So if we say is sunny or is weekend, that's going to be true because is sunny is true. So if one of them, sorry, at least one of them is true, an or will be true. But in order for an and to be true, you need both of them to be true. So it makes sense if you think about it. Here's an example with an if statement. So in this case, we have an age. Somebody is 20 years old. We have a Boolean for whether or not they have ID. So they're 20 years old and they have ID, right? And so if we want to find out if they can enter wherever it is that they have to be 18 to enter, so maybe they're going to a club or something, uh, we want their age to be greater than or equal to 18, and they have to have an ID. So if they're over 18 and they have an ID, then they may enter. Otherwise, access denied. So you have to have both of these conditions, both of them. So if they're, you can't be 12 years old and have an ID and get in, right? But you also, you can't be, 50 years old and have no ID, right? You have to have both. You have to be over 18 and you have to have the ID in order to enter. And in order to make that happen, you use an and. Okay. Now, another example would be this or condition. So or just means we need one of them to be true. So in this case, we have two Booleans. One of them is has ticket. So we can imagine a scenario where you have to have a ticket. They don't have a ticket, so that's false. We have another condition. The other condition is that is guessed, and that one is true. And so here, if and it's has ticket or is guessed, then welcome. So you don't have to have both. You just need one or the other. If you have a ticket, welcome. If you are a guest, welcome. If you're both, welcome, right? The only way that it's false is going to be if they have no ticket and they're not a guest, then it's going to tell them to purchase a ticket. Okay. So hopefully that makes some sense for how an and an or work. And then they're going to explain how we do this with ranges, which is what we actually just saw. And I mean, we just saw it when I was writing in Eclipse. We didn't just see it. So the key here is that in math, you write stuff like this, right? So this statement right here says X is between 5 and 10. That's what it says, right? And so you can't just type this. If you try to type it like this down here, if 5 less than X less than or equal to 10, that is not valid Java. It will not work. You have to split it up into two conditions. And the way you split it up into two conditions is exactly the way we already did it in Eclipse. So if you need X to be between 5 and 10, you need to say that X is bigger than 5, first of all. And you need to say that X is less than or equal to 10. And then there you go. So that's exactly the same scenario that we did in Eclipse, except I think we used 10 and 20 instead of, 5 and 10. So condition like this, you have to split up into two conditions and connect them with an and. All right. So you can also detect if something is outside of a range. So just to give you an example, let's say I'm going to modify my example here and talk us through it. So let's say we want to imagine an if statement that detects if X values are outside of a range. And let's say, what's the range? I don't know. Why would we have a range? So like let's say we have a range that like I don't know, like we're doing children's tickets. So let's say there's a ticket for something and we have an age range. So I'll say if age values are outside of the range, 10 to 18. Okay, for example. So if you wanted to know if the age is outside of that range, then what you'd have to do, I'll change this to age, and we'll say outside of 10 to 18. If you want to make this outside of a range, you can, but actually here you wouldn't use an and. If I said 10 to 18, you say age, if we wanted outside of that range, that would mean the age is less than 10, right? Outside of the range. Or they could be bigger than 18. So, or the age is greater than 18. And I didn't put any symbol in here. If I put and, this is wrong. Hopefully you can understand this. So um, here this says age less than 10 and age greater than 18. But how can somebody be under 10 years old and over 18? Right? That's not possible. You can't fulfill both of these conditions at the same time. So and is not the right way to connect these. The right way to connect these is with or. So this is saying if you are less than 10 years of age, or if you're greater than 18 years of age, then you are outside of, 10 to 18. And so if I run this now, I should not get anything, right? But if I put something that matches this condition, like I put in 7, for example, 7 is outside of 10 to 18. And if I put something like 34, that's also outside of 10 to 18. So if you need outside of a range, that means less than the range or greater than the range. So less than the range or greater than the range. But you can't be both, so and is the wrong thing to put there. All right. So if you need to do outside of a range, like this would be a range from 12 to 65, but we're looking outside of the range. That means less than 12, greater than 65. If you're looking for within a range, then that'd be greater than or equal to 12 and less than or equal to 65, right? So if you're within a range, you'll be using ands probably. And if you're outside of a range, you'll be using ors probably. All right. And summary of the stuff we did here, you use and when all the conditions should be true, and you use or when we only need one of the conditions to be true. And you combine these with what you already know in order to make more complicated statements. All right. So that is pretty much the lecture, but we still want to take a look at maybe some questions, and then maybe we'll go back and we'll look at that practice test and see if we can do a couple of them. But before we do that, let's go to Zybooks. All right. So they're going to explain all the same stuff to you in Zybooks. I'm going to skip down here to these challenge activities and see what we can do with them. Now, it doesn't really do ranges right off the bat. So I'm going to do this one, 7.1.3, and I'm just going to skip to number 2. I'll skip to number 2 here, and you'll see these aren't so bad. So if we're reading this, it says integers num people and room capacity are read from input. There they are. I see that. Well, as soon as they start talking if, we're going to be writing an if statement. So if num people is less than or equal to 140. So you type this very literally. You say if, parentheses, and it says num people. So num people less than or equal, that's less than equal to 140. That's 140. That's the end of that part. So we open up the curly braces, we'll close the curly braces. This is how I type it. And then I put a blank line in there to type. If num people is less than or equal to 140, it says assign room capacity with room capacity minus 140. So that is room capacity equals room capacity minus 140. Right. So then assign room capacity with room capacity minus 140. That is what I did. So on this assignment, where this we're just really we're not even doing ranges, we're just less than or greater than, basically. Okay. Let's try another one here. Start. Do the second one, whatever the second one is. All right. So this is going to require us to do like a longer if statement because it has, look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different things we're supposed to be doing here. So that's going to involve like an if and an else if and so on. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now, don't let that worry you. We just need to read it and do what it says. So when the integer variable number of diners is. So we have an if statement and we're comparing number of diners. So if number of diners is what? Well, according to the first line, it says greater than or equal to 10. So that would be greater equal 10. What do we do? Output too many diners. So we just need to print this out. So that will be down here. System.out.println too many diners. Close the curly brace. So don't forget to, open your curly brace and close your curly brace on those if statements. And then it says between 6 and 10 exclusive. Now, inclusive means we want to include the 6. Exclusive means we want to exclude the 10. So if we do this with an else if, and we're still doing number of diners is what we're dealing with. So if you wanted between 6 inclusive and 10 exclusive, that means we need to be bigger than 6, right? But inclusive. So that would be number of diners greater than equal to 6. And if it's a range, inside a range, we'll use and we want to be up to 10. So that would mean that the number of diners should be less than or equal to 10. And that's it. So we'll close parentheses, open curly brace, close curly brace. And in between, we're going to do something like the previous one, except it's supposed to be printing out big table. Now, you may know that there's another way to do this up here, and I'll show you it once we finish this. So we're at the third one. So the third one is between 1 inclusive and 5 inclusive. So this is inclusive, inclusive. So include the 1, include the 5. So it's going to be very similar to the previous one. In fact, I'm going to copy it. I'm so lazy. But between 1 and 5 means greater than or equal to 1. And 5, that means less than or equal to 5. Now, I just realized that we made a mistake on the previous one. So let me go back to the previous one. And so this statement up here said 6 inclusive. So that means we should have the equal sign there to include the 6. And it says 10 exclusive, which means this should have been less than 10. Because if we put in an equals, that means we're including 10, right? Number of diners equals 10 is included. If I take away that, now it means number of diners less than 10, which is not including the 10. So when they say exclusive, that means we should exclude the 10. So I had an equal sign here that should not have been here. Okay. However, on the one that we were just doing, 1 to 5, it's inclusive, which means it should be greater than or equal 1, less than or equal to 5. Both of those are included. So that's why we have the equals. And we're supposed to print small table. So I'll just copy the previous one, tab it over to where it should be, and this should say small table. And then it says less than 1, but actually we don't really need to. You could do another else if, but it could just be an else because if you think about it, we have greater than 10, between 10 and 6, between 5 and 1, and everything else must be less than 1, right? Because this is 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and greater than 10. That's all the numbers, right? The only numbers left are the numbers that are less than 1. So we don't need to say it. We can just print out bad input, which is what we're supposed to do for this case. Bad input like that. Now, if you don't like that, it does say less than 1. So I could change this to an else if number of diners, and I could say less than 1, parentheses. Like this is fine. Okay. So it's okay to type out that condition if you want to, but it is unnecessary. And we did get it. In fact, a lot of these are unnecessary though. So like I don't need this less than 1 because everything is included or everything left is less than 1. So I could delete that and just have else. That would still work. But also from the start, this first if branch takes all the numbers greater than 10. So this is all the numbers greater than 10 already taken care of, which means I don't actually need to say in the second one that we're dealing with numbers of diners less than 10 because the top statement already dealt with all of the number of diners that were greater than or equal to 10, which means all that's left is less than 10 down here. So this is unnecessary, the part that I highlighted. So we could just say greater than or equal to 10 and then greater than or equal to 6. And this is automatically going to be between 6 and 10 because the above 10 values were already taken care of with the previous one. And similarly as we go. So this is at this point, after this, we've already done all the numbers 6 and higher. So we don't need to mention that we need to be less than or equal to 5 because everything left is automatically less than or equal to 5. So we could delete that. And so like if I run this code here, it'll run just the same as when I had it longer and we had all the ranges really listing the exact boundaries of the range. All right. So that all worked. We're going to go to this next one, which has the logical operators in it, even though we were just using the logical operators. Now, the first thing it does is explains the logical operators, like how does and work? And remember when we said in order for and to be true, like you had to have true and true, they both had to be true. And that's why this last row here is true, true, true. So when A is true and B is true, A and B is true, right? The bottom row says that if A and B are true, then the whole thing's true. And for the or, as long as one of them is true, the whole thing's true, right? We said that. So a true true is true, but also a true false is true. And a false true is true, right? Remember, like, think about it like the example in the thing was if they had a, what was it? Yeah, it was has ticket or if they were a guest, right? So if you had a ticket and you were not a guest, that was fine. Or if you didn't have a ticket, but you were a guest, that's also fine, right? So the only way that an or becomes false is if everything is false. Okay, so they're just explaining in these little tables that are called truth tables, what we already explained about how and or work. Um, Also, there's not. Not just means the reverse. So like not false is true and not true is false. Alrighty, I'm gonna come down here. We're just gonna skip to exercise. We should know what these all are. So what's and? Hey. Oh, what? Didn't I? Okay, I'm confused. Is it changing the order here? And uh and is and. Two vertical lines is or. We didn't say this, but not is the exclamation symbol, and exclamation is nothing. Okay. All righty. So they're gonna make us do these ranges, I'm assuming. You can go through these yourself. I'm gonna go to the challenge exercises. Um, all right. So this says modify the given statement. So looking here, I see that they've already written this entire code. We're just making a change. So it says modify the given if statement so that different tax bracket, I see that right here, is output if salary num is outside of the range. Okay. Otherwise, 24% tax bracket. I see 24% tax bracket as well. So the line on line 11 is incorrect. So that's what we have to fix. So basically, it's these symbols here that are going to be wrong. So outside of the range. So think about what it means to be outside of the range. So if you're outside of the range, that would mean you're less than 55,000, right? Or you're bigger than 81,000, right? So the range is here from 55,000 to 81,000. So outside of the range means too small or too big. So you need to be less than 55,000. So this right here says greater than or equal to 55,000. That should be less than 55,000. We have or, we do want or is correct. And the other thing you could be is if you're not less than 55,000, you could also be outside of the range by being greater than 81,000. So this is also the wrong symbol. So if you wanted to be outside of the range, you need to be smaller than 55K, greater than 81K. Basically, they had the conditions for inside of the range, and what we wanted was outside of the range. Let's skip to number 3. All right. Temperature of silver in degrees Celsius is read from input into a variable. And there it is. If degree val is, so if degree val. So let's start writing that. If parentheses degree val. What about it? So if degree val is less than or equal to 96, that's less than equal, I said 96, but 960. What do? We output the silver is now a solid. System.out.println. Silver is now a solid. Close that. And then it says greater than 960, but you don't you don't really need that. Again, this is just like the one that we did in the previous section. You could do else if, and then you could say, I'm going to copy this. Degree val uh, greater than 9600. Oh, well, that's fine. Actually, we'll do that. Else if um, degree val greater than 9600. So I just typed that. And it says and. So and is going to be and less than 2170. So you have to retype degree val, and it's less than, I see 2170, right? Less than 2170. And we're supposed to output the silver is now a liquid. So I'll just copy the previous one we did, which is close. And I think we just need to type liquid. So greater than 9600, greater than 960, and so we used and less than 2170. So and degree val is less than 2170. Did we get it? Yeah, we got it. Oh, there was more. Oh, yes, I didn't read the rest of it. Otherwise, okay, we have more. When you see otherwise, that means else. I didn't actually read the whole problem here. Else. Else what? We output the silver is now a gas. So now a gas. So we just didn't have this else here because I didn't read the last line. So when you see otherwise, that's a clue to type in else. And we'll get it right this time. We had all of them right until it got to the real big numbers, which were for the gas. All right, and we got it. Now it says detecting ranges with gaps. Um, this is not anything new conceptually. This is just combining, trying to write like a more complicated statement using what they gave us here. So we'll just do this first one first. So this is 7.3.2, ranges with gaps. Um, integer caret amount is read from input. Cool. This is what we need to do. If number of carets is fewer than 5 or more than 10. So this is not really doing anything complicated here. We type what it says. So number of carets fewer than 5. That's caret amount. Fewer than 5 means less than 5, right? But then it says or. Well, how do we do or? Right? We have a symbol for or, so we just type or. And it says or more than 10. Now, you can't just type greater 10, right? You have to type the variable as well. So you have to say caret amount. What's more than 10? The caret amount more than 10, that's greater than 10, right? So less than 5, greater than 10, and there's an or between them. And it says we're supposed to output unmanageable amount. So this is just a number of carets that we're just not prepared mentally to deal with it today. That you have more than 10 carets? No, can't do it. Sorry, not today. Also, if you have 3 carets, well, that's just too few carets. I don't know what to think about that either. I'm only prepared to think about a number of carets that's between 5 and 10. All right. Same thing here. We'll do this one and we'll scroll down. Actually, that's going to be um, the only code we have to write here. So we'll do this one and we'll be done. Uh, integer requested napkins, blah, blah, blah. All right. So we need to print large case if we have 30 to 80 napkins. So if, and this is where you remember, if we're trying to do a range that we need to be inside, that would be if the requested napkins variable, if requested napkins to be 30 to 80, that would be greater than or equal to 30. And the requested number of napkins should be less than or equal to 80, right? That's going to give me 30 to 80. And that's a large case. So we need to do system.out.println large case, done. And then we also need to detect 130 to 180 napkins. So that's almost the same thing. So notice, watch how I'll do this. I'm going to type else, and I know it's else if, right? But I'm just going to copy my if statement and paste it right there. So then I could just modify the statement. So extra large case is going to be if we're 130 to 180. So we're just going to modify the 30 to be 130, and we're going to modify the 80 down here to be 180. And that is apparently an extra large case. And I don't see anything else to do here, just these two cases. So I think that's it. And it was. Okay. So it's just typing the range that it says, basically, not much to it. All right, so I'm out of time. I have to go now, but hopefully this was useful, how to do and or operators. That's going to be it for now. I'm going to stop the recording.